format. So I want to say that Abayomi Azikiwe is the editor of the Pan-African Newswire, the contributing editor of Workers' World, and you can have a sample copy on the way out. An organizer of the Moratorium Now coalition in Detroit. I know he's also on the steering committee of the U.S. the U.S. Social Forum. No, good for you. You have that time to sleep. Good, that's nice. No response, okay. It'll be what it'll be. The Moratorium Now, which is to fight foreclosures, and the Bail Out the People movement has sprung out of the formation of the Moratorium Now to fight foreclosures and evictions. He's also a weekly co-host to the Fighting for Justice radio program in Detroit. This is so exciting. I'd like to introduce you, sir. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me here to the great city of Cleveland, Ohio. I haven't been here in a number of years, and it's always good to be back here. I have comrades here and friends here who are doing a lot of great work here in Ohio. And we're all part of the Midwest, the so-called post-industrial Rust Belt Midwest. And so therefore we have a lot in common. Detroit is considered the epicenter of the global economic crisis that we're facing here in the 21st century, going into the second decade of the 21st century. And our topic this evening, history of U.S. foreign policy towards Haiti, is a very, very important topic. But before I get into it, I wanted to just address for a few minutes some of the things that are going on in Detroit, which definitely relate to what's going on in Haiti. Because in Detroit, we're considered the epicenter, as I mentioned, of the economic crisis. Then at the same time, we're a majority city of people of African descent. Over 85% of the population in Detroit are African Americans. We also have a substantially large and growing Latino population in the city of Detroit. So in that regard, demographically, we're very much related to the people of Haiti. Haiti, of course, for many centuries was a bulwark of the slave system. In fact, it was the most prosperous colony not only of France, but of all European powers during the era of slavery. Detroit, at one point, was considered the industrial hub of the world. They used to call it the arsenal of democracy. Yes, that's what they dubbed it during World War II. Yes. And they converted a lot of the automobile plants into plants that produced war machinery during that particular time period. Yes. And of course, as many of the writers have pointed out, for example, Sam Marcy and Fred Goldstein, this inherent and terminal crisis of the capitalist system here in this country, it illustrates very clearly during World War II that that was the really only time in U.S. history that we've had full employment. I think the unemployment rate was down to something like less than 2% during the period of U.S. involvement in World War II. And what they taught us in economics was that when unemployment goes that low, it means that people are just trying to figure out which job to go to. If they want to leave their job, they can go somewhere else, and that's why you have a 1.2% unemployment rate. Well, we know today the unemployment rate officially is about 9.7%. They said that it remained steady this past month. But the unofficial unemployment rate, and in Workers' World newspaper in the last issue, there's the results from the Gallup poll that indicates that 30 million people in this country are looking for employment. So the actual unemployment rate is far higher than the 9.7% that we hear about in the monthly jobless report that the government puts out at the beginning of every month. And of course, those figures are distorted. They don't account for the people who have been discouraged from looking for work because there's, in all likelihood, no work available. It doesn't include people who have gone back to school because they can't find work. It doesn't include people who are underemployed or people who work in the informal economy. So there are a lot more people who are suffering as a result of the economic crisis than what we hear coming out of the federal government. Now, in the city of Detroit, we have a huge problem with unemployment. A recent study was done by a professor from the University of Michigan, and he said that even though the official unemployment rate in Detroit is around 28–29%, in actuality, it's around 44.5%, simply because of those same factors I discussed earlier. People who are disillusioned, who don't look for work, people who are part of the informal economy, and people who go, let's say, back to community college or to a four-year college because there's nothing else available for them to do in terms of the workforce. So this is a serious problem that we have in the city of Detroit and in the state of Michigan. It was estimated last year, and I haven't seen these figures recently, that the state of Michigan was losing approximately $500 million every month from its state budget. And this is happening all over the country. It's a huge crisis in terms of state government funding. The stimulus money that was sent to the state of Michigan, the most of it was used just to keep the state afloat, to keep it from collapsing. Because anytime you're losing $500 million a month, that's a very serious situation that we're facing. And then overall,
it should be obvious to me, I guess, but why is it losing that much a month? Is that just tax revenue?
Yeah, a lot of it is foreclosures of homes. People are not in their homes, therefore they're not paying property taxes, which a portion of it does go to the state. Sales tax are down tremendously because people don't have disposable income to purchase goods. Yeah, those are two reasons right there. Businesses that are closed, that are not paying taxes, that's another reason. Yeah, so all of those factors are very important in analyzing that. But in Michigan, the official unemployment rate is about 15%, a little under 15%, but in actuality, it's much higher. Now, they're coming up with all these schemes to, in my opinion, beat back working people, beat back the nationally oppressed communities in the state of Michigan, and particularly in the city of Detroit, ostensibly to deal with the economic crisis. For example, the city workers in Detroit, they're telling them that they have to take a 10% pay cut. The non-union employees, it was imposed on them last year by the newly elected mayor, Dave Bing, who people who follow basketball may remember him from the 1960s and 70s.
Yes, sir.
Well, he's the mayor now of the city of Detroit, and he's very corporate-oriented. He didn't even live in the city. He lived in the suburbs. And apparently somebody told him to run for mayor. And he moved back into the city and ran for mayor, and he was elected because he had a lot of economic backing from the powers that be in the city of Detroit, corporate Detroit. You know, not the people of Detroit, but the corporations that actually control the means of production and the other aspects, economic aspects of the city. So he came back and he ran for mayor and he won, but only about maybe 17–18% of the registered voters even went to the polls during the elections. So it goes to show that the overwhelming majority of the people have no faith whatsoever in the electoral political process in Detroit. And we see it in other parts of the country as well. Now, he attempted to impose a 10% pay cut on the city workers, and they've been fighting it through regular demonstrations. They even have a court case against the mayor. In terms of county government, Detroit is in Wayne County. They imposed a 10% pay cut on the workers for Wayne County, and they're attempting to impose another 10% pay cut. So that would be a 20% pay cut. And the way they're doing it through furlough days. So one day out of each pay period, you're off, and you just don't get paid for that day being off. So in effect, you know, it's a 10% pay cut. And with the county workers, they're trying to make it 2 days out of the pay period. So it's a 20% pay cut. But the county workers are fighting back as well. They're refusing to accept this additional 10% pay cut. They've been holding regular demonstrations, and they have also taken the Wayne County executive a guy by the name of Fakano. They've taken him to court in order to stop him as well. So you have all these attacks on the unions, on the workers in Detroit, by both the city government as well as the county government. The mayor came out a couple of weeks ago and said, well, you know, obviously they can't read. Obviously they can't count. Because if they can read and they can count, they'd understand